Welcome to Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren, and yes, it's true. There is a new Wheel of Time book coming out called Origins of the Wheel of Time, and it will be out this November. I actually got to interview Michael Livingston, the author of the book. This is everything you need to know about Origins of the Wheel of Time. You might be looking at the length of this video and wondering why. I'll summarize everything you need to know about the Origins of the Wheel of Time book up front, but the majority of this video is dedicated to a wonderful interview I got to do with Professor Michael Livingston, where we talked all about his background and a lot about what to expect in the upcoming book. He shared some really cool details about his experience meeting Robert Jordan and working with Robert Jordan's wife and editor, Harriet McDougall, and the rest of Team Jordan. He also talked about changing the official Wheel of Time map, and we even discussed some cool details related to some mysteries and reveals about certain characters and events in the series that will be discussed in the new book. I tried to edit this down as best I could, and I even removed some of the interview for this video. But if you want to hear even more, I've included a link in the description to an unlisted YouTube video that contains the full unedited interview. Also, regarding spoilers for this video, you are safe to watch most of the video. However, there will be certain portions of the interview where we'll discuss some full book spoilers, but I'll bring up a spoiler warning on the screen so that you can watch most of this video even if you haven't read all of the books. The full title of the book is Origins of the Wheel of Time, the legends and mythologies that inspired Robert Jordan, and it will be released just about everywhere on November 8th, 2022. The author is Professor Michael Livingston. I'll more properly introduce him before the interview in a bit. Harriet McDougall, who's Robert Jordan's wife and the editor of all of the Wheel of Time books, is also listed as a contributor. The book contains about 80,000 words, which means I get to update this graphic that I made in my very first YouTube video that shows just how large the Wheel of Time series is by word count compared to some other popular books. The audiobook will actually feature some narration by Michael Livingston and Harriet McDougall, and we'll also get to hear the return of Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. The audiobook also includes a bonus interview with Rosamund Pike, who plays Moraine in the Prime Video TV series. Professor Livingston will give more details about the format of the book in the interview, but some of what you can expect to find in the book includes a biography of James Oliver Rigney Jr., or Robert Jordan. A portion of the book is dedicated to understanding Robert Jordan's writing process and how he changed his mind about certain storylines or characters over time. Included along with that is an alternate scene from an early draft of The Eye of the World. While going through Robert Jordan's notes, Professor Livingston also discovered that the current map of the Wheel of Time world is not accurate to Robert Jordan's own notes, or even to another of Robert Jordan's published companion books, The World of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, or The Big White Book as we fans like to call it. Harriet McDougall agreed to have a new, more accurate map created based on what Professor Livingston found in the notes. About half of the book contains a detailed glossary with more insight into certain inspirations for Jordan's world and characters, including some important information about mysterious characters and events that I won't spoil here. But in the interview, Professor Livingston wanted to make it clear that this is not the Wheel of Time Companion version 2.0. The book rarely discusses in-world theories or reveals. It's more about the things that inspired Robert Jordan and influenced the creation of his world. That said, there is one particular character whose backstory will be revealed in the book. It's a major full series spoiler, so I'll just say for now, if you know, you know. Since Professor Livingston specializes in military battle history, we even get a more extensive look at the inspirations and other details related to the last battle. There's also an 8-page full-color photo insert in the book. This is a video that Michael Livingston posted on Twitter a few days before I interviewed him, where he shows some of the different editions of the book. I'll include a link to this Twitter post as well so you can learn more about the various book editions. Regarding spoilers for the actual book, this is what Michael Livingston said.
It is full spoilers. It is full spoilers. So, I mean, that said, because this is a background kind of book, I'm not spoiling everything because I'm like reviewing it all, right? If something's spoiled, it's because I need to talk about this character who only shows up at the end of the books, right? So I need to talk about, I think everybody's kind of like waiting to find out who he is. Look, the only reason that that's in the book is because I'm writing about his process and the process of writing the books.
And that's just about everything you need to know about the origins of the Wheel of Time. Now, you may be wondering, who is Michael Livingston? And I can tell you after this interview, which I'll show you in a minute, I'm confident that he was the right person to write this book. Professor Michael Livingston is a two-time winner of the Distinguished Book Prize from the International Society for Military History, an author of best-selling fiction, an award-winning full professor at the Citadel, a frequent public lecturer, and occasionally even a person on TV. At present, he serves as the Secretary General for the United States Commission on Military History, and he sits on the board of the South Carolina Academy of Authors. He wrote some incredible articles on Tor.com, including this article about what it was like digging into Robert Jordan's notes and papers. He also wrote about how the map for the Wheel of Time world was changed based on Robert Jordan's notes and what that's going to look like in the book. And he wrote this really great article talking about his experience meeting Robert Jordan and how he was asked to speak at Robert Jordan's posthumous induction into the South Carolina Academy of Authors. Here's a little snippet of that speech.
And so, to James Oliver Rigney Jr., whose works, whose fantasies have sold more than 30 million copies in 20-some languages all around the globe. These incredible numbers speak for themselves. Writing as Robert Jordan and a host of other names, he has been one of the most popular modern fantasy writers, a verifiable master of that most difficult but impacting of genres, an American heir, it has been said more than once, to the legacy of Tolkien himself. As Edward Rothstein noted in a glowing review in the New York Times, the genre's masterworks by Tolkien, fought in World War I, were begun on the eve of Britain's entry into World War II and are fraught with nostalgia. Jordan, the Vietnam vet, is creating an American late 20th century counterpart where nostalgia is replaced by somberness. It is as if in the midst of spinning his web, Jordan has turned fantasy fiction into a game of anthropological risk, played out in the postmodern age. There is nothing simple, nothing small in this work. The Wheel of Time is the height of seriousness, a vision that cuts to the heart of our cultural, political, and religious worldviews in the way only a fantasy can. It is not in the mirror, after all, that we see the truth of ourselves. It is in the eyes of strangers in unfamiliar lands. Rigney revitalized a genre edging on stagnation. He changed the publishing landscape. His influence on this and future generations, measured as such things must be in the fullness of time, will be nothing short of enormous.
Needless to say, Michael Livingston has an impressive resume. You should also visit michaellivingston.com. If you want to support my channel and you haven't yet pre-ordered or purchased the book, there's an affiliate link, which means if you click on that link and order the book, I'll get a tiny little bit back for each order. If you don't want to purchase the book through the affiliate link, that's totally okay too. I've included a regular link that you can go to purchase the book. Remember, you can also look down below at the different chapters. I'll try to break this video up into chapters so that you can better follow the different questions and things that I asked him. And now let's get into the interview. First things first, thank you, Michael, so much for joining. It's a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you about this upcoming Wheel of Time book. And because the book is called Origins of the Wheel of Time, I just wanted to start by kind of asking, what are your Wheel of Time origins? You know, how did you first get into the series? And I kind of want to know, what was your relationship with the series before you became an author for the Wheel of Time?
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to be here. And great question. My relationship with the books started like when I was 15. I went to the bookstore and bought the first edition of Eye of the World. I was just needing something else to read. It happened to be kind of like facing out, and it was a brand new release. And sat down, read the first couple chapters maybe, and spent all my allowance on it because it was just awesome. I was like, this is great. And from that point forward, I just bought every book as it came out. I became an addict, as so many people are. And that's fine. It's an okay thing to be addicted to. and that just like carried forward me, however many years it's been, right? The series has been going on quite a long time. And so, my relationship with it was fan-based. And it still is, and I remain a fan of these books. I continue to sort of view them in that fan landscape, but it has, obviously it's kind of morphed from then, in the sense that I come to be kind of viewed as this, I don't even know what you call me, the academic guy for it or something like that. I don't really know, but that process of going from somebody who was a fan, who kind of viewed the books a certain way, to kind of talking publicly about that, was really a kind of fateful thing that happened because of where I am. I'm filming this in my office at the Citadel. This was Robert Jordan's alma mater. I'm actually doing this at his desk in his chair.
Wow.
And which is a whole nother story. But not long after I got here, I met him just once, which was unbelievable. He was already quite ill, but he was amazing, just an awesome dude. And then he passed away, unfortunately, obviously. And subsequent to that, within just a few months, he was inducted into the South Carolina Academy of Authors posthumously. He had known that this honor was coming. So I think that's a blessing. And I was asked, because I was, a professor here, because people knew that I knew his works and loved them, will you say some words sort of laying out, I don't want to say the case. I mean, he was already inducted, right? But sort of the, why he was inducted, right? Why is he so important for literature, essentially? And gave that talk, hardest speech I've ever given in my life. I don't have any problem talking in front of people, but that was wicked. Harriet was like literally like 8 feet in front of me. Everybody's bawling their eyes out. I couldn't look at her because I knew I'd lose it. So I gave the speech like talking across the audience, and then I'd like go up and over her and across. Just don't look at Harriet because you'll lose it. And that kind of snowballed giving talks on the Wheel of Time, and that essentially led to where we are today.
Interesting. So it sounds like you kind of established a working relationship to some degree with Harriet and her team, and that was kind of what started that.
I did, yeah. Because all I knew was just the few emails that I'd exchanged with him. After I became a professor here, we were setting up a creative writing award in his honor, and then that talk. And after that talk, she invited me to give another sort of presentation. And that led to me giving kind of another present. And it just like, people were like, well, you need to come to JordanCon. All right, I come to JordanCon. And then I got to know Team Jordan very, very well. And that led to, lots of sort of discussions behind the scenes as far as what was happening in the books and things. So it really did set off the chain of events that led to this present book.
Interesting. That's wonderful. I'm curious to hear from you now that you've written a Wheel of Time book, and I'm calling it a Wheel of Time book. As far as I'm concerned, this is now part of the Wheel of Time canon.
That scares me.
I'm sure it does. We're all very excited, of course, to have a new official Wheel of Time book. But, I asked, what was your relationship like before you became a Wheel of Time author? Now, with this experience, what is your relationship like with the books?
I am still getting my head around that, is my honest answer to that. I'm still getting my head around that. The project happened so suddenly and had to be done so quickly that I kind of didn't really have time to think. It was just like, okay, I've been offered this chance to do this book that, my God, of course I want to do. All I could think was, I've got to get this right for the fans, like because I know what this will mean to them, because I know kind of what it would have meant to me. So I've got to get this right. I've got to do this right for everybody. And also, I don't know if, like, will anyone ever get a chance to do this kind of thing again? So if not, like, I can't look back and think I screwed it up. I just can't do that. So that was all I could think about. And I turned the book in, and then it's like in other people's hands and stuff. And now having conversations like this, and people are like, oh, it's a new Wheel of Time book. And I'm like, what? I don't know what that means. And I don't know what that means, like, for my relationship with the books, because I still love them as a fan. I didn't make them. I'm not the maker. And so it's actually a really, really strange thing. I talked to lots of people in the writing of this book, because I wanted to get all the stories of it all straight, including talking to Brandon and everybody about how that happened. And it was something I actually did ask Brandon at one point, like how did you kind of like navigate that, right? How did you navigate going from one side of it to the other? Obviously in a much bigger way than I am by every stretch. So I got some feedback from him on that, but it's evolving. I still have a hard time, when people say stuff like that, just because, again, I don't really know how to parse that.
Well, how could you? I think that's probably the best answer, really. Quick spoiler warning. This next section doesn't really contain major spoilers, but we do mention the very last scene of the last book. And we also talk about a character whose storyline was changed throughout Robert Jordan's writing process. So if you want to remain 100% spoiler free, maybe you shouldn't watch this section. That said, in my opinion, these are light spoilers and you won't really know what we're talking about without the context of having read the books. But I just wanted to warn you, you can skip to the time code listed here. I was going to ask you, I said it's canon. I'm kind of thinking of this book, I haven't read it, of course, but I'm kind of thinking of as a companion to the companion, so to speak. It's sort of like, we know it's called Origins of the Wheel of Time. We know that it talks a little bit about Robert Jordan's backstory and his inspirations.
Yeah.
How canon is this book? And I guess what I mean by that is, Robert Jordan's notes aren't just all canon. He wrote things down that he then changed his mind about. There were a lot of things that he ended up completely changing. And so I'm curious, I guess, how you approach that in the book. How do you feel when I say that the book is canon?
Well, I mean, so it is canon in the sense that there's nothing in here that was not approved by Harriet, Maria, like everything in here was like had everybody's weight behind it, which obviously was itself an extraordinary experience to be that kind of involved. It's canon in the sense that, like the new map that's in it, the new map of Randland, like that's basically like the map now, because that's the map that's been approved by everybody. That's the map that matches his notes that weren't fulfilled in the writing of the White Book. So yeah, it's got all these canon elements, but it is, as you said, like I'm going through the notes, I'm talking about his process of how he's writing this stuff, and part of that is explaining to people and giving examples. There's thousands of unpublished words of Jordan in here that are, like this is what his plan was, right? No, not anymore. Now this is the plan, right? And you can see that evolution, how he dealt with things like, Demandred, like,
right.
He's changing his mind on that. And I really don't understand why some people get upset about that he had changed his mind on things, but like that's how he wrote. And I try to explain like the organic way that he wrote and give you examples of it, showing people that like this is the man's process. This is how he did it. These are the kind of sources he's using, right? This is his motivation. Like this is what he's trying to say, what he's trying to accomplish. I think gives a richer understanding to the books and to his accomplishment, but also shouldn't change people's like what the books mean to them, right? So I don't want to, like, this isn't like trying to change, well, other than the map, but that needed to change. Shouldn't really. It's really just all this backdrop, right? So yeah, it's canon, and I guess that makes it a new book of the Wheel of Time. But like, I don't want people coming to this like, oh, we're finally going to get to see what happened after Rand lit the pipe or something like that. Like, no, like that's not what this book is. Please.
This is more like pulling back the curtain a little bit, shedding light on some of the behind the scenes and understanding his process. It sounds like, well, that's absolutely fascinating to me. And, as such an accomplished writer, I'm sure there are an element of people who will be just so fascinated by that side of it, Robert Jordan's process and how he kind of learned as he went. So you've got your own fiction books, fantasy books that you've written, like the Shards of Heaven books, the Seaborn books. I'm curious, now that you've had this experience digging deep into Robert Jordan's notes, how has this influenced you as a writer? How has this maybe changed your process?
Great question. It, to some degree, hasn't, because what it did is make me feel like, oh, I'm not crazy. So, the way, Shards of Heaven is historical fantasy, right? So it's a, looking at Cleopatra, Mark Antony, the rise of Augustus Caesar, and trying to keep all the historical facts straight while weaving in a backstory of like the Trident of Poseidon being real and stuff like that, but without changing the facts of history. So doing that was a process of layering elements of history and fantasy and trying to slip in lots of like tons of Easter eggs and things, and like seeing that was the same basic process that Jordan was doing with his fantasy books was really comforting, I guess. It is because I'm like, well, Jordan was amazing. Obviously, I'm not him, but that's so cool, that kind of the same process. And then that process actually informed the writing of Origins of the Wheel of Time, because there'd be points where I think I know there's something behind this event or this person in the Wheel of Time, but I don't have the note on what it is. Well, how would I have done that? Well, I would have probably gone to this thing, right? And sort of reverse engineer the way I'd do it, and then go back and see if the same thing is happening with him. And often it was. So there was kind of a neat feedback loop there that really kind of helped inform the books, inform the writing of Origins of the Wheel of Time. And, in my next fantasy, book or whatever, yeah, I think it's gonna make a difference. The only fiction book that I've written since I turned into Origins is the third book of the Seaborn series, Stormborn. And I honestly was writing that so fast, I didn't even have time to come to terms with it. It's just been one kind of thing after another. So I haven't taken a break and like a deep breath. Okay, look, how does this mean? Like, what does this change? I haven't really gotten a chance to do that. I'm hoping to do that in January.
Well, you may be entering a whole new whirlwind with the release of this book,
I don't know.
Spoiler warning. In this section, Michael and I discuss a character who's a very important, mysterious character at the very end of the books, and one of the biggest mysteries that's going to be revealed in the upcoming Origins of the Wheel of Time book. We don't discuss any of those details specifically, but we do mention that character by name. We also talk about a major event that happens in the last book, which is a very big deal, and so I've included the time codes where you can skip, or the place where you can skip to if you want to avoid these spoilers. We talked a little bit about the canon, and I know that you have an early draft of a page from the Eye of the World in the book.
Yes.
So obviously that kind of stuff isn't canon because it was changed in the final publication.
Yes.
I guess I was curious, do you sort of distinguish that at times? Like, these were early notes. How did you approach things like spoilers and canon versus non-canon, that sort of thing?
It is full spoilers. So, that said, because this is a background kind of book, I'm not spoiling everything because I'm like reviewing it all, right? If something's spoiled, it's because I need to talk about this character who only shows up at the end of the books, right? So I need to talk about, I think everybody's kind of like waiting to find out who Nakomi is.
Of course.
Look, the only reason that that's in the book is because I'm writing about his process and the process of writing the books, and Nakomi happened to be part of that process. And so that's the reason it's in there. It's not because, here, let me solve all the mysteries for everybody. Like that's like what the companion and things like that are doing.
Right.
This is looking the other direction, is like behind the curtain. So, Nakomi happened to be something I was talking about. And so needed to be in there. The last battle, I've got pages on how the last battle is constructed because I'm looking at the construction,
right? Not
because I'm wanting to give you a précis, right? Sure. Yeah, but part of that inevitably is to talk about where is the last battle happening? I have to mention that, so it's spoilers,
right? Of course.
So yeah, it's there's quite a lot of that. I do try to be, because I'm looking at behind the stuff. I do try to be kind of clear, early notes said this, right? And so, in an early note, he said this. That's obviously changed. And the kind of the heart of the book to me is this big chapter I do on his process. And that's chronological, right? So I'm starting with here's the earliest scrap of anything, right? Here's his initial ideas, and then we get this layer, then this layer, this layer, this layer. And now we get the test manuscript, as he called it. And now we get first draft, and now we get the 32nd draft, right? And sort of showing how that happens, and how that then informs the process of the whole thing. So yeah, I try to distinguish where we are in the process. I try to explain why that matters, what's changed and why. Or if I don't know, there's certain things that and I talked about this, that there was an article that came out that I did on the making of the map. And, there were questions there well, I've got these early notes that say that it should be this way. I don't see that in the later materials. So should it be that way or not? We had to sort of discuss that and hash that out, because, I can see why he's doing it in the early materials. I know why there's this, this idea of this huge, coral reef, Great Barrier Reef, as it were, off of Shanchan. I know why that's there. And I've got it. Okay. But in the later materials, I don't see any references to it. Right. So I assume it's gone. What do we do?
To be fair, the big white book, as we call it, the world of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, is famously not canon in some ways. There are some things that are very contradictory to the final books. So that's probably a little bit difficult to navigate as well, I would guess.
It was. And of course, that was where, we found out that the map was wrong, because we had his notes on that book where he was saying, change this, and then he was ignored. And so, I'm like, well, if we're going to do a new map, like, should we follow his notes or should we leave it the way it is and assume it's canon? And, Harriet said, no, we're doing a new map, and again, that became one of these strange, where questions came up on the map and they were just like, well, whatever Mike thinks is what we're going to do. And
interesting. So there were points where you did kind of have to make decisions that there
oh
wasn't
God, yeah.
clear guidance. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that was, on the one hand, like great. On the other hand, terrifying. And look, I tried to be at every point I could as sort of conservative as possible. Right. So, I mean, if I had carte blanche, truly had, and felt like I really had carte blanche, and they told me I kind of did, but like, I didn't feel totally willing to do anything. That map would be different from even what we produce, because I think that some of the stuff in there, like, that's not right. I think ultimately it becomes this, but we don't have sort of the smoking gun to support that. And so, like, this is what we can support with the smoking gun that we have. So that's what we're going to do. And that's kind of the way I tried to approach most of this. So I wasn't putting myself in so much as like trying to make it a snapshot of what Jordan would have wanted.
Wonderful. Spoiler warning, this next section is a lot like the previous one. We do mention a mysterious character that doesn't appear till the end of the books by name, but nothing more than that. And we also discuss that big event that happens at the end of the series. But again, no actual details about it are said. We really just call them by name. So I would consider this to be light spoilers, but use your own discretion and follow the time codes below. I'm hoping to title this video that I'm creating, Everything You Need to Know About the Origins of the Wheel of Time. Obviously I can't talk about everything, and neither can you. But if you had to sort of sum it up, what are the basics that you want people to know about this book? And then kind of in tandem with that, I'm curious about sort of the format of the book. I'm not necessarily like a chapter by chapter breakdown, but just kind of like how you're approaching it. Because I know that you're talking about, Robert Jordan's influences and origins. I know you're talking about glossary things, maps.
Yeah.
So if you could just speak a little bit to some of those things that we need to know about what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's simplest to do that at the same time, essentially, which is, it really is kind of a chapter breakdown, because there's not a lot of chapters. The first part of the book is a biography of Jordan, like, who he was, how he grew up, his influences in life. And then from that, I moved to a kind of discussion of him and Tolkien. This is actually based on work that I've presented at JordanCon and places like that. How I sort of view him as an American Tolkien. He sort of takes the methodology and everything and takes it one step further. And then I moved to a chapter talking about his process. And this is like, okay, let's get into the nitty gritty. First manuscript bit he wrote, and let's move through that and show how he's working on this. And after him, how Brandon was working on it and Team Jordan was working on it. Show all that process so people really can see, snippets of draft, snippets of notes, including like whole scenes. I've got like whole scenes from like first draft of Eye of the World. Like, this was the way it was going to happen. It totally did not. And that's a good thing because of X, Y, and Z. So, or X, Y, and Z for any Canadians listening. And then that kind of takes about half the book. And then the other half is a glossary that goes through characters, places, events, and tells you, like, here's what I know about what he's using. That is not all that could be said on those subjects. There is tons more I had to fit into a box, and I was trying within that to be as, again, kind of, conservative, kind of as evidential as I could, so that it wasn't so much me, so much as it was like me pointing at things. And then there's, like a index to the book, but yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, about half of it is this glossary. That's where you would find, like, if Nakomi's your shtick, like, open up to N and read it when the book comes out. But buy it first if you could, I'd appreciate it. But the process stuff, obviously, that's coming before. But in the process of those glossary entries, it's talked about there too, right? That when I talk about the last battle, again, I'm talking about it. What was this formed of? What was the actual military history behind this? Because it is literally based on an actual historical battle.
Wow. So
which one? How so? Like, what happened there? Same thing with Battle of Shining Walls, whatever. Like, here's the background of what's going on there. And it is spoiler alert in the sense that I have to talk about who was on, like who's there at the last battle or whatever. But it's not, the idea is to show kind of what's the background again. And there's lots more that could be done on this. Again, there are two, I mean, I do medieval like military history. So like if I'm talking about the Battle of Crécy, like I've written whole books on that. I can't do that in this book. It needs to be like 3 sentences, like I only got so much time. And so, yeah, just trying to give people what they need to understand, do it in a way that's approachable, right? I'm not writing this for my fellow military historians.
Right.
But in that is kind of opportunity, I think, for people to kind of take that ball and run with it, right? And say, well, Livingston says this is going on. Let me show you like even deeper how that relates to things. Because I'm just flying through, so there's lots of room for that for sure.
Spoiler warning, this next section does contain very minor spoilers. Once again, I would consider these super light, but we mention one event that happens in book 1 and talk a very little bit about it, but really not much detail. And then another event is mentioned by name that happens in book 6, The Lord of Chaos. We know that Robert Jordan had military experience. He served in Vietnam. And,
I talk about a lot of that.
And I'm guessing that his writing is very much, it feels very much inspired by that or influenced by that. I guess I was curious from your perspective, how was he at writing battles? Was he pretty good? I mean, you mentioned that some of the things about the map maybe didn't feel quite right, that it was maybe too fictional. I don't know if you meant like literally geographically they wouldn't work.
Literally things. Geographically, yeah.
So I'm curious.
He's got some rivers running uphill. That's not
right. So I'm kind of curious, like, where battles are concerned, how was he at that?
He was quite good. He was very well informed. There was really only a couple things that I couldn't put in the book that I wanted to. And so I can't give a lot of details on them because I wasn't allowed to put them in the book. But I will say one of them was a military history thing that it was stunning to me. It was just jaw dropping, and I wanted it in there. And I understand why it couldn't be. It's okay. But he was good. He was really good. He knew his stuff. He was well informed. And a lot of his military history books were given to our library here at the Citadel. And so it has more than once happened, that I'm working on my military history, books or whatever. And I go and get a book from the library, and I'm, going through it for my research or whatever. And it's one of his books, because they're all stamped and stuff. And I'm just like, God, this is so wild.
That's amazing.
He was fascinated by this battle as well, like that's so cool. So yeah, he was very good at it. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to write a battle correctly. And he does a terrific job. So yeah, it's one of the things I always loved about his books, is that kind of lived in quality and the fact that it felt right.
And it feels very much like you're in, for me, I mean, I've never experienced that kind of thing. It feels very much like you are feeling the feelings of the people there. Even early book 1, when there's some things that happen outside of Shadar Logoth, and some of these things you just feel so much like you're in the fight, and it felt terrifying, at least to me when I first read it. And I thought he never really lost that. Dumais Wells is very famous for this sort of carnage and the atrocities of war, and you feel it in a way that you don't often get with other writers. So
yeah. And I talk about what's behind Dumais Wells.
Oh, so. Wonderful. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So, speaking of emotions, I want to quote this exactly because I don't want to get this wrong. You said, "I don't think it's a good idea for you to access the notes just to say you've done it or something like that. These are truly precious and irreplaceable items. The library is not a place of pilgrimage. Visiting them shouldn't be a feather in a cap. Our common interest should be to ensure that they aren't locked away and that they remain available for dedicated research." This is interesting to me because someday I kind of do want to make pilgrimage, so to speak, and I do want to sort of look through some of the notes and find out for myself what it was like to be in Robert Jordan's head. At the same time, I don't want to be disrespectful or just do it to say I did, And so I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, look, I have a foot in both camps here, right? As a fan, oh my God, this is the stuff. Like, how cool is this? And it's there, right? So if you make an appointment and all that stuff and get in there, great. You can do that, and that's good. at the same time, look, these are pieces of paper. And the more people that handle that piece of paper, the less that paper is going to survive. Just period. There's like that's the way it is. Like the oils on your skin, like every time we touch these things, we destroy them a little bit. And the idea of well, I'm going to sort of destroy this thing because I think it's going to make me feel good for this moment.
Yeah.
Is something that really doesn't sit well with me as an academic, just kind of period. Whether this is, yeah, I'm at this, national monument and there's a chain up that says don't go here, but nobody's looking. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Like, because I think it's going to be kind of neat to have done that. Like I'm like really against that kind of thinking. Like that's a real selfishness.
Of course.
Though again, I understand like the want for that. I understand the desire for that. And the like, oh, I touched it, I touched it. And I'm like, I get that. I totally get that. And I, there's no law against it. So, if you want to do it, it's fine. But I want people to be like aware of what they're doing and what the cost of that is and potential cost of that. If that happens too much, one of those costs will almost undoubtedly be that they're going to lock it all away. And nobody gets to see it. That's not good. Like, I think that's a very bad thing, because those people who really do need to see the notes for, whatever reason, not just because they want to, but like they really specifically are looking for a certain thing or whatever, should be able to do that. And the more open it is for that, the better. I'll use the example of the Tolkien archive because I've worked in the Tolkien archive. To get into the Tolkien archive, you have to have multiple sequences of permission from a lot of people, a lot of sort of, you're authorized for this. We've looked at your background,
it's like security clearance.
Yeah, security, like sign the NDA. You may not speak about anything you've seen. Like, it is like lock and key. And again, so on the one side, like that's great in that it's helping to preserve these there's no way of using this material otherwise. And it's valuable material. That's great. It's preserving it. On the other hand, it is also putting up barriers. It's gatekeeping and saying, well, you don't have a PhD or whatever. You don't get to see it. Well, there's nothing about having a PhD that makes you somebody that knows better necessarily what you're seeing. So we don't want that gatekeeping there. I want it to be available to those people who need to use it. And I don't want to get shut down because, the rest of us are willy-nilly trying to get in there.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a follow-up question to that. I guess I completely understand the need and desire to preserve the original documents, especially those printed out documents. I guess my question is, if I understand correctly, when you go to the library, or even before you do, when you book an appointment, there is a sort of indexed, like this book contains things on these or this box of notes contains these things on these topics, and this box contains these. So there has been some archiving or digitizing to some degree of this, or is it just an index?
That's an index. No digitizing.
So why not digitize it? Why keep it so secret? I guess, is this...
Well, it's not kept secret. This is like be careful with your language there.
Sure.
Nobody's keeping it secret. It's open. It's there. No, it's not digitized.
I guess my question is, why not make it more available to the public by digitizing it and releasing it? I guess that's kind of what I'm curious about.
Money. I mean, and it's not my school. This is College of Charleston, but I assume the answer to that is money. Like, we're trying to have enough money to keep the lights on. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
To do the digitization of those. I mean, there's more material in that archive than are in the entire published series.
I've heard that, and that's mind blowing to me.
It is an enormous amount of material. To digitize that is an enormous cost.
Yeah.
And I'm sure on the scheme of the hierarchy of needs for the library, digitizing this stuff so that a bunch of us can kind of geek out over it, I think is probably not high. I think they're probably like,
that's fair.
We got other stuff to do. Obviously if money were no object and personnel were available and everything, I'm sure they would be thrilled to do that. Because it would be in their best interest, right? Not to have people like just showing up,
right.
I want to see this stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure they would love that. I would love that. but yeah, it's that costs money.
Yeah,
That's a
I
huge
guess I'm
expense.
thinking, it's just a few boxes. What can it be? But it sounds like it's a mountain of.
It's an enormous amount of material, and it's not terrifically well organized.
Mhm.
It's and that's nobody's fault. It just, like, the way it got kind of boxed up. It is organized, but also you're like, well, this bit of information is in 5 different boxes, right? And which one is coming first? And because it's not really dated, so there's like a whole level of understanding stuff. And that's one of the other things that I kind of, it does bother me, is that there are people that go in, grab a piece of paper, say, oh my God, I know this secret. I know the answer to XYZ. I can get street cred, and get on a website and talk about, how I know this thing and I'm so important. And a great majority of the time, it's like, yeah, no, he changed his mind on that, like, because you didn't look in that other box. Like,
Right. It's not actually the
right. So
answer to a question. Yeah.
yeah, you're taking stuff out of context and not understanding it. And because it's hard to understand. It's hard to get your head around his process and the way this stuff is organized. I had to, early on, one of the first things I had to do is construct a huge spreadsheet of, like, to try and figure out, this draft comes before that. They're not dated, but that one comes before that one because of this reason, right? So this one comes between, and trying to get all that straight so that I could show the process and show the development. And if you kind of don't have that, you could take stuff out of context.
And probably even just tracking what you have and haven't looked at and all of that.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Thank you so much again for being here.
My pleasure.
Origins of the Wheel of Time is out November 8th.
November 8th.
Just about anywhere you've got it there. And I saw your post on Twitter showing some of the different editions. I've got my pre-order, anxiously awaiting the arrival of that. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
My pleasure.
I talked to a few people. I just said on Twitter, hey, I'm going to be interviewing Michael Livingston. Anyone have any questions? And this was last minute yesterday. But these are some just rapid fire. You can literally answer yes, no, Raffo, or, whatever you want. So
right on.
Walking the Ways asked, which knowledge base did you draw on that surprised you the most?
Mean like knowledge base of mine?
I would assume he means something that inspired Robert Jordan.
Okay.
That surprised you. Something that Robert Jordan drew from that surprised you.
Military history. I knew it was there, but there were a couple of these battles that, a couple moments where I hadn't gotten into, figuring out exactly what he'd used. And when I did, I was like, are you kidding? Like, are you, like, really? You went to that? Oh my God. So yeah, there are moments of that were just, like, blew me away. Totally cool.
Okay, great. Serpentine Gag asked, what was it like delving through Jordan's notes? I mean, I think you've sort of talked about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. But I'm approaching, I had to approach that process not as a fan. Again, I'm kind of wary of, like, feather in my cap as a fan,
Right.
Got my hands all over it. This was academic material, just as I'm, if I'm looking at a singular manuscript, the single manuscript that survives of something, like, I don't go grab that just to grab it. Like, I'm looking at it because I'm trying to understand something that's happening in the past. Same thing here. I had to approach it academically. These are all clues. This is a puzzle. How do I put it together? Which are the pieces that I need? And how can I do that in the most respectful way possible of the material?
Wonderful. Anas, well-known fan and friend, Anas Ahmad asked, he said, we know RJ changed his mind about certain topics / arcs as he wrote the books. Is there something that he researched is there something that you researched that you wish RJ had kept as an original idea instead of what was published?
Read and find out.
Wonderful. I'm so glad Anas got the first Raffo. Matt's Dagger asked, what culture did RJ draw upon that you had no clue about until you researched it?
I can't really think of one I didn't have a clue on.
I mean, like you said, you've sort of been delved into this so deeply.
Yeah,
you probably had sort of known certain influences.
Yeah, I mean, there were things that I learned, right? But it wasn't because it was coming from left field. It was like, trying to figure this out. Like, my known suspects are these, which one is it? So I wouldn't say there was something that kind of came out of left field. I kind of hate saying that. It sounds like sort of weirdly arrogant or something, but yeah, there wasn't anything that was completely new in that way.
MF Heaton said, how tempting was it to just put a little something in that you really, really wish was true, but wasn't supported by your research? Just a little nugget of wishful thinking.
Oh God, no, it wasn't. The only point where I felt that, because again, this was like something I specifically went into, I'm not going to do that. So the only point that really happened, honestly, was when they were like, well, whatever Mike wants to do with the map works. And my like, oh man, I really want to change some of that stuff. And if you look very close, there's a lot of things that did change. But yeah, it was tempting to be like, oh, they've just gave me the ball. Can I just run with it? Because I really think it should look like this in other ways. It should look these ways. That was the only time where I was at all really tempted. Though to my mind, even that would have been, look, I don't have his notes saying to do this, but knowing the man as I do, he would have done this, right? So,
right.
It's a good question, though.
Spoiler warning, this next question talks all about a major character and major reveal from the very last book, so just skip this part if you haven't read all of the Wheel of Time books. Rajiv Mote asked, if Prime Video's The Wheel of Time read about Nakomi from your book, would they be able to fit her into their show as a recurring cameo in meaningful ways earlier in the narrative?
Ooh, Rajiv, that's a good question. Yes. Yes. Should they? No.
So the fact that she was so unseen, so to speak, is an important part. The fact that she appears so little, you think, is an important part of...
Read and find out.
Okay. Well, I thought that one might get a raffo. Okay, this is the last question. And you kind of mentioned this. Round-version 5280 from Reddit asked, I guess he has two questions. Is there anything else sealed that wasn't in the notes? And do you have any confirmation about other main characters that were also important reincarnations?
What do we mean by sealed there? Talking about notes that aren't available?
Correct.
Yes, there are notes that are not available. Yes, the answer to that is yes. Do they have information that is not in the other notes? Yes.
Can we ask why?
Yes.
Is there a reason for that we know of?
Some of it is because it contains material that would be that might, in addition to saying having one bit of material, has something like financial perhaps, or like something that is not something you just want the public having hold on, or has personal information or something like that. Like,
sure.
There's going to be stuff like that that we just don't want publicly available. Other stuff, there are some kind of complex reasons why that would not want to be out, and they're not. I don't want people like speculating that like that means it has something awful in it or something. It's not like that. There's a lot of layers to something this large. The Wheel of Time is a massive thing at this point, and so we have to sort of be careful about what could be misconstrued and things like that. So yeah, there are things that are not public, for those reasons. Right? I mean, like the actual transcript, for instance, of the recordings that were made before he died. Right. Those are not something that just is out everywhere, because
it's out of respect for Robert Jordan and
right.
Harriet.
Yes.
It's personal.
Yes.
Makes
exactly
complete sense to me.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a whole tranche of material. But yeah, I don't want people sort of like thinking, oh, this is now something they got to clamor for. Like, no, just I give you what you need in the book. That you got it. That's what you need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is the final spoiler warning for the video. I kind of misunderstood this next question, and I was kind of thinking that his answer was more of a big deal than it was, but we do end up talking about some things that are spoilers related to certain characters, certain theories, certain backstories, certain inspirations. So this is kind of just a general spoiler warning. I'd probably recommend skipping this final section here, and you can jump to the time code where he kind of summarizes a few more things that aren't spoilery, but I would just say maybe skip this next section if you haven't read all the books, just to be safe. Well, that's great. And then I guess he did ask about other characters who might be reincarnations. I guess.
Other than who?
I mean, like Rand being a reincarnation of Luz Theron, I guess. Maybe like who was Egwene a reincarnation of, or Matt? Maybe those types of questions. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, they're all in there.
Really?
Yeah. Though I mean, are they reincarnations or are they forerunners of them? It's the wheel of time. They're the same. I give that background kind of material for I think just about all the main characters.
Awesome.
That again I had backing for, and wasn't just like, well, here's Livingston like just popping off, like, no, I mean, we know who Rand is based on, we know who Egwene is based on, we know who Perrin's based on, we know who Matt's based on. Yeah, we got all that. Moraine, obviously, like, of course. All that's in there. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's not something I was expecting. So it's a great answer.
Well, that's the point of the book, right? What are the legends and myths that inspired him?
Yeah, so, like legends and myths that inspired them. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's who they are.
There are like theories, for example, like Egwene is Latra Pose de Cum from the Age of Legends Reborn, that sort of thing.
Oh, see, again, that's in world. And that's not what I'm doing.
So, right. So I think that's what I was envisioning. And but it makes a lot of sense. We've got like Odin and Thor and all these others that's
what I'm going for.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This, again, please don't come to this book thinking, oh, this is like companion part 2. Nope.
Right.
Nope. It's looking the other direction. So, you get Nakomi and a couple others, but it's because it's pertinent to where they're coming from. I'm not, this is not, it's going to have all this stuff on the Age of Legends that we don't know. Not unless it's talking about process.
Sure.
And if it is, then I'm doing it.
Well, you've been so gracious with your time. I really appreciate this. It's nice to just nerd out about the Wheel of Time with a fellow nerd.
No problem.
Yeah. And, I appreciate what you've done. Looking forward to the book. Any last things you want to say to anybody about the book, or any tease that you might want to give before we go? Man,
I am so nervous. I cannot even express it. I'm just so nervous because I'm worried, first of all, people like thinking that the book's something it's not, and then they're mad. And I'm nervous about if 5 years from now I look back and think I should have done this differently, like, and I missed something or whatever, and I didn't do it to like the best of my abilities, like, how could I handle that? And so I don't know. It's very nerve-wracking. It's very strange. I'm not somebody who usually gets very nervous, but I'm very nervous about this. At the same time, I'm just so excited for people to read this and I hope, look at these books in a way that they have not looked at them before, and understand Robert Jordan in a way that they have not understood Robert Jordan before. Not that it needs change anything that you love. It shouldn't necessarily do anything to affect anything you've gotten. If your head canon says something different than what I got, like, rock and roll, people, like, that's whatever. Love it. Love what you love, and that's great. But I do hope that it helps people, and even outside of us, right? The geeks. I hope that it reaches an audience beyond that again, helps kind of convince them too. Look, this is a major work of literature. This is not just something and people play dress up. I mean, it is that, and that's great, but it is also really important and vital in its own right, and amazing for what this man accomplished, for what he was trying to do. It's unreal. And so I want to kind of like share that with people. And again, I hope it goes well beyond us. And kind of slaps a few people around. I'd be cool with that, because the Wheel of Time is incredible. It's an amazing thing. And insofar as I have an opportunity to help people understand that, I hope that that's the message that gets across.
Well, thank you so much. I can only speak for myself, but I appreciate, the interviews that I've seen of you and the things you've said and the reports from Jordan Con. I'm so upset I missed that panel. I'm just so thankful that you were the one who was asked to do this. I really get a sense that you respect the work, you respect Robert Jordan, that you do have an academic's mind. And to me, I'm just thankful for what you've done. I know I haven't read it yet, but I think I can speak for many of the fans saying, no need to be nervous. We're so thankful for your efforts. And
Well,
of course, nerves are real. And, I regret
yeah.
everything I've ever done artistically after I finish it. But we're here to support you.
Thank you so much. I mean, and for others, I regret nothing at this point. Like, I'm like, I reread it after I got my own copy, and like, just my stomach was just clenched rereading it. Like, oh my God, am I going to find something I screwed up? And I didn't, and I was like, oh my God, this is really good. I think I'm probably biased, aren't I? I'm probably biased. But yeah, that feeling of like, I just want it, when it gets into everybody's hands, that it does mean something to them, and it's positive, and everybody still feels good about it afterwards. I appreciate that you do going into it. Harriet said at one point, that was the only person who could write this book. And I was like, that's like good, I guess. Like, but also sort of, I don't know. It's just all the weight.
It's a mantle.
Comes back.
Yeah.
It comes back to this, like, well, now it's canon, and now you're a part of this thing. And like, wow, I am not ready for that. I don't know if I'm ever going to be ready for that. But I do hope that people really enjoy it. You should have been at that panel at Jordan Con. I don't know what you were doing, man. But
I don't either.
Missed the boat.
I'm kicking myself about it. I'll be honest.
Missed the boat. But yeah, hopefully I'll be at Jordan Con. I know I'm going to come to WoT Con.
Oh, good. That if I have to choose between the two next year, WoT Con's the one I'm doing. So I'm hopeful to see you there.
Yeah, awesome.
I'll bring my book and get it signed.
Hey, there you go.
That'd be awesome.
There you go.
All right. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thanks again so much. Again, the book comes out November 8th. If you haven't pre-ordered it, please pre-order it. I'll include a link in the description and probably in the comments. But again, thanks so much, and best of luck to you with everything moving forward.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe, and have a wonderful day.